program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us tonight Ms. Pam Atkins, who is the great Poobah office manager of the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. Welcome, Pam. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. And so we're going to talk a little bit tonight, just for the point of view of the public, of the efforts underway to make their experience in our doctor's venue, and indeed every doctor's interchange. I think this is going on. Make things better. What do we do? How are we handling patients? What mechanisms do we have? But before we get into this conversation, why don't you just discuss your journey through life? I think for a long time you were in the thrall of the orthopedic surgeons. Is that right?
Yes, for 34 years I worked for Frank Kelly, Chuck Richardson, and
there's some
there are
orthopedic surgeons,
right.
and now you've been with us for a substantial period of time
Right.
with the neurosurgeons.
Right.
And I hope it was an improvement. Dare I say that? Can I make a joke about it?
Yes, it was.
No, you have to be cautious. Dr. Kelly could be watching.
Oh,
here,
that's
so you have to watch
okay.
your form.
That's okay.
It's really great to be with the more charming neurosurgeons.
Yes,
Is that right?
yes.
Okay, good.
You're a little more complex,
Oh,
but
that's
your
good,
complexities.
That's good. Yes, yes. And so,
your compassion takes over.
well, and actually what happens is that many, just in the way the world goes, the doctors are jumping around and they're saying do this or do that or what the problem is, and you have to be a very good diplomat, do you not, to make everything work.
Right, definitely.
So just to keep everybody happy is tough with these doctors. And now, I think in general, at least this is my experience, people are out, they're having these doctor interchanges, they think, well, it took so they didn't send the paperwork back. My appointment is they've screwed my appointment up. I didn't get my paperwork, and all of these things are a problem with the American healthcare system. We have over 300 million American citizens. They're getting their health care in different venues, and many of them are under the care of different doctors' offices. And so what's happening? Well, let me just go through and we'll ask a few questions here.
Okay.
All right. So at least at our institute, generally what you have to do is go through another doctor to come see us. Is that
Right.
correct?
A referral.
So,
Right.
so the first thing that happens is that because we're mostly a referral practice, and that we look after people that have substantial problems, and it's generally better they go to their local doctor or be referred. It's difficult to do it otherwise, but occasionally it happens. But they get a referral, and then so what's going to happen next? The patient is going to their local doctor. They're going to say, well, you should probably see a neurosurgeon. What's going to occur then?
Okay, well, they call the office, and we have worked very hard to make it easier for the referring doctors to make an appointment with us, and really been trying to educate the staff and make it a friendlier,
So what happens
easier.
is, well, so one of the things that occurs is that, and these are places that physician or patient interest can fall down. I mean, trying to just get this appointment. Sometimes there's a delay, and it's not an uncommon situation. At least this has been my experience, that someone that has a substantial problem, there's a very long delay before that patient can get to a specialist. Well, you're in pain, or this is happening, and it's 3 months out before you can see you can see the specialist.
Right.
And so I think we're making an effort to try and make that a little quicker. Is that
We're
right?
making every effort to get them seen within a week.
Really? So that's
Yes.
pretty quick. So okay, that's tough to do, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
And
but
so
it's doable.
it's a real effort to get that accomplished, and I think that's in the public's interest. You need
Right.
to get in and get that opinion.
Right, exactly.
And so so the appointment is made, and at least this has been my experience, to have a really appropriate interchange. It's going to be necessary for that patient to bring in films or bring records. And does that happen? I mean, tell me how that happens, that the patient is instructed for that to occur.
We like to get all the paperwork from the referring doctor.
Yes.
And have it ready, have the patient in the computer, ready to be seen when they get there.
So sometimes what can happen is just in patients, and because I think everyone in out in the TV audience has had experience in doctors' offices, and they've had varying kinds of misadventures, at least the system is trying to get this corrected.
Well,
so
yes, we are putting in the new practice management system, and we're going into the electronic medical record system, which will really help.
Now let's talk about the electronic medical record system, and we've occasionally talked about it on our presentation here, different things. This is something that's really being mandated at a very high level in the country, is it not? So almost everybody has to
eventually to keep up with technology, keep up with patients' records, make it easier for the patient to be seen quickly.
And you know, there's some upside, there's some downside, there are issues on privacy, there's issues on this, there's issues on that. And it is going to make it easier for the government from a major, I guess, regulatory point of view to watch things.
Right.
So all this information about what's happening in the American care system, these millions and millions of interchanges, are going to be really on computers, and the government's going to have access to this information. And when do things have to be complete on this? When are things complete?
I believe it is January 2013.
Yes.
That we need to
so
have it in place.
Really, and that's everybody pretty much.
Yes.
All the doctors in the country are really working very hard right now.
And it's very expensive and hard for smaller practices to get this done.
Now I'm told, I've heard doctors complain that the information that's put in there is going to be very time consuming. And it depends on the different computer systems, and there's a lot of chaos and confusion about what computer system to put in there.
Exactly.
Is there any government direction about what to do about computer systems?
Not really.
They just say you have to do it.
Right, and it's more of you just have to really look at the different systems and make them work for your practice.
Now, suppose the two systems don't intermesh. I mean, are there problems out there? The government's mandated this, and if one doctor's office has system A, and they're sending records to a system that has another, their B, the interface is a problem.
That is a very big issue.
Yes.
And when you're buying a computer system, that needs to really be looked into and made sure that that can work.
And so if it doesn't interface correctly, all kinds of difficulties occur. And we can expect across the country these difficulties to happen. Is that correct? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So we're trying to put the electronic medical records on board, and isn't the difficulty just getting the information? It's time consuming to get the correct information there and put in.
When you first put in a computer system, the front end work is the most important.
Now, isn't it possible the government may, or the effectuating institutions may even ask for additional information in the future?
Oh, yes.
So they could say, well, how tall was this patient? Or did the patient have flat feet? We want to know that.
Right.
And they would mandate that the system be upgraded to get the new information.
Right. Exactly.
And we could imagine that would be happening.
Yeah.
I mean, am I right on that? Is that wrong to say that?
Technology is not going to stop.
Yes.
It is going to go on, and updates, and it's an expensive.
So, right, okay, so we're doing that with the electronic medical records. All right, so our hypothetical patient is going to, these changes are underway, and presumably what should happen in the future to help the patient is those records could just be sent to us, bingo. Right. So you're in the doctor's office, and some of the things that are good is it would be possible not to have to repeat test or get additional information. So when the patient comes, that would make things a lot better. All right, so the patient arrives in the office, and then what happens? I mean, if they're going to come see us.
Well, what we're trying to do right now is make it a very pleasant experience for the patient to come to the office, come to the front desk, be signed in, and just make it a very good visit from the front to the back door.
Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, and I think if you're a sick person and you come to the doctor's office, and many times people are confused, they're upset. It's appropriate that everybody just recognize that. I mean, particularly with the patients we see.
Compassion.
Well, we've got some very sick patients with big problems, and so I think it's. Now, let's see, patients they come in wheelchairs sometimes, on stretchers. Right. All right. So the patient is there, and then what happens when they arrive?
Well, it starts the process of getting signed in at the front desk, getting them back to the rooms to see the physicians, and when they start to leave, we try to make sure they're taken care of.
Now,
with
here's
their
one of the big
test
problems. Here's one of the big problems that happens is the patient will say, "Well, I've been waiting here for an hour. I haven't seen the doctor yet, or 2 hours, or what's the problem?" And actually, I think it's reasonable to say this. I think the doctors, not only in our office but all the offices, they make an effort to be there in a timely fashion, and that's a point of courtesy to do that if that's possible. But sometimes there are delays, and I would say often the delay occurs if a doctor is tied up in surgery. And in our situation, I think we have lots of emergencies that happen. Sometimes we're delayed in surgery, and in our particular group, we cover it's a grade 1 trauma center, so we have lots of things happening, lots of emergencies, and that can cause a delay in seeing patients.
Right. Yes, and you know, if patients are sitting in the waiting room and there's a delay, it's common courtesy to tell the patient.
Yes.
And let them make that decision. Do they want to stay? Do they want to
Right.
reschedule?
So we try and let the patients know that.
We're trying to definitely do that.
All right. And so the patient sees the doctor and has an interchange, and then generally something happens. Some tests are ordered, or and then what happens next? I mean, the patient is arranged to have these tests or procedures or therapy of one sort or another.
And we're trying to really streamline this situation and make it much easier for the patient to, when they start to leave, to have it all written down for them and everything.
Now, do we do that? I mean, sometimes it's useful for patients to have that.
It's very useful. That is something that we're working on right now to make sure, because patients just, in general, I know myself just going to a doctor, I can't remember everything.
Right. Now, and sometimes, I mean, in general, when people come to Macon, Georgia is not the biggest town in the world, I guess I could say that, but sometimes people that live in rural areas, they've got lost or they have issues, and so we sort of try and help people get to where they need to go. Now, are there occasional? I mean, this must happen. I mean, I think it may happen occasionally. Somebody has a complaint. I mean, how is that handled? So maybe someone was rude, or they didn't have their paperwork, or what happens with that? How are the complaints handled?
When if a patient calls, I take the complaint.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I try to
Now, I didn't think
off.
we had complaints. No.
Well, we don't have many.
Oh, good. We have an occasion. No, I mean, and the thing is, there needs to be an open line for complaints.
In fact,
I mean, you need to feel like,
appreciate.
It's somebody. We need to be able to say, you know, well, we had a problem here. We want to know about it, do we not?
Right, and if we don't hear the complaint from the patient, we really don't know how to fix the problem.
Yes.
So I don't have a problem with people calling. I welcome it.
Right. And so we try and make things work out. Now, you know, one of the things that happens, I think, it's been my, I guess, observation. There are all the vagaries of insurance and getting things done. That's really complicated, isn't it? We try and help patients with that. I mean, it's just a real nightmare many times.
It is a big nightmare for patients, and it's a nightmare for us as employees.
Some of I mean, this is part of the problems of the American healthcare system. We'd like to be able to offer patients everything, all the services that we can do that. We have these paperwork issues. We pretty much treat all comers at our institute, and I think we've seen things where suddenly the patient loses their insurance, and it's really a problem, isn't it?
It is.
Or they're trying to get, I guess, approved for Medicare or Medicaid. Or something. It's really quite a nightmare. Are we pretty helpful with patients?
Yes, and really, to me, treating all patients with respect, no matter what insurance they have, is a very
or anything. I mean, whether whatever their situation is. I mean, I think that's sort of a almost it's almost a religious mandate, isn't it? So we have to be nice, and actually, it is a privilege to look after patients. I mean, I think that should be our number one motto.
Right.
Well, let's see. And then sometimes we have the PAs are assuming that means physician assistants. There's more. I think we're using them, at least in our arrangement, more and more And so they sometimes help out too, do they
Right.
not?
Exactly.
To see patients.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we try to ask patients if they're okay with seeing a physician
Right, so
assistant.
sometimes that happens. In general, the doctor is generally
Right,
will see the
and we
doctor,
like-
sometimes the two together, and there's
Right.
there are issues.
We like to have the physician in the office
Well, of
when
course.
the PAs
I mean, I
are
think
there.
people expect to
Right.
expect to see the doctor, and then but
Exactly.
their PAs are around. They sometimes do some things to help. Well, let's see. All right, so the patient goes home. This is not an uncommon story, and there's something that happens, and it's after hours. They call our answering service. So what's going to occur then?
Well, when they call the answering service, we have a doctor on call. Then
Yes.
the answering service calls that physician and
Yes.
is taking care of it.
You know,
at that
and I'll
point.
say this: it's not an uncommon event that a person would call a patient, and it would be a patient of. There are a number of doctors in the group, and it would be some patient that's seen another
Physician.
physician, and so the issue that happens many times is after hours pain medication.
Right.
So I mean, I know that many people would like us to be more generous about giving people pain medicine over the phone that we don't know about. But I've been in practice in this part of the world for over 30 years. At least over the years, there are these abusive situations.
Right.
So people sometimes try and get
Medicine
they
after
get
hours.
drugs. I mean, really, they do that. They're sort of experts at it, and I think that's one of the things that happens about our caution about doing
Right.
that. Also, we don't want to intervene in the patient's care without full knowledge of what's going on. So,
Right.
I think one of the problems that happens, people that call after hours are not answered, and then we encourage people to call during the office day. Do we
to
not?
get their
And then-
their pain medication.
Now, or any kind of medication. Let me say this now. So, are people do we not call back? Is that a problem? I mean, nothing is perfect, but are we making an effort to
We're
make
making a
sure
very
the
big
patient?
effort
All right, well, let's
to-
discuss that.
yeah.
So, how are we making sure if somebody calls, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they've run out of pain medicine, and they're in pain, and they call our office? How are we going to get to the patient? What happens? What do we do to make sure that happens?
Well, we have put some employees in place to take patient calls to make
Yes.
sure that everything's answered, the voicemails are answered before anybody leaves the office.
Yes.
So I think that's worked real well.
Yes.
We have a girl that we've put there, and
So
she does a
all
very
right now,
good job.
so we're putting a system in place so
Right.
that if patients are having problems, they can
They can get
they
us.
can call us. And I think often the question, they're different. I know this. I've been taking call for years, many years. I still do. And patients have different issues to discuss. And I'll just say, late at night, if we don't know the patient, it's generally the answer. We can sometimes reassure patients, but often we tell them to go to the emergency room. That's just
Right.
all if it's serious enough. So
Right.
that might be what you could expect.
Right.
If you called late at night,
Right.
that would be what we would try and do. Well, let's see. Tick. We have different issues out there with the whole system that's being put in place in this part of the world. I think that how many people do we have at the Institute? It's a pretty big number, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it's
I mean,
close
how
to
many-
70.
Almost 70 employees there, so it's hard to keep everyone happy and keep them.
But we're trying.
So that's a big managerial issue. I mean, just trying to keep everyone
Yeah.
on their tether and
Yeah.
keep people content.
But we've tried to, we've set up team leaders.
Yes.
And we have some very good team leaders, and of course, we have our team leader meetings with you, and I think
Yes.
that's worked real well.
Well, good.
And I think the team leaders like to hear from the doctors,
Yes.
get their inputs, and with physical therapy department, or surgery
Yes,
center,
yes,
outpatient
yes,
surgery
yes.
center, and MRI.
So there are
and
a lot of
CT.
things. There's a lot of things we do as we go forward with this.
And just having these team leader meetings makes everything run smooth.
Yes. And so, I think just at least at the Institute here, as we look at our practice, we try and do things. There are a lot of challenges, in general, that are
Right.
faced. I think we have increasing paperwork requirements. Do
Oh
we not?
yes, oh yes. That has.
I mean,
been
our
over the
paperwork
years.
things are just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'll just say that when I operate, if I do an operation, I have to sign about 20. Am I exaggerating? I don't think I am. I think I counted
really.
today. I believe I had about 20 sheets to sign of one sort or
Yes.
another. The paperwork is just absolutely unbelievable, isn't it?
It's almost you can't see the patient before doing the paperwork.
And I mean, this is increasing. So we
Right.
have just an extraordinary increase of paperwork.
And that is one good thing about electronic medical records,
yes,
hopefully
yes.
to eliminate some
Well,
of that.
I hope that will be the case. You know, I think another thing that's out there that that maybe the public needs to be aware of, as the American healthcare system changes, there's more and more of an idea about practice algorithms. In other words, the government or an insurance apparatus is saying you have to do this, you have to do that. That's getting to be a substantial problem. So
yes.
many times if we try and we say to a patient, this is what we think you need, we encounter difficulties, do
Right.
we
With
not?
pre-certs and...
Well, talk about a pre-cert. What is a pre-cert?
A pre-cert is an insurance company. The patient may have a certain insurance company, and they require us to call and get a reference number to say, okay, we approve the
Yes.
patient to have a myelogram, have
Or whatever
an
study,
MRI,
yes. Or anything,
a surgery.
or a surgery, yes.
And it's getting to be a little harder because we're having to have more peer-to-peer where the
Yes.
physician has to talk to the insurance
So
company.
you know, I think some of what's happening is healthcare is so expensive.
Right.
And the I mean, this is fair. The amount of health insurance expenses for a normal family is just unbelievable,
Right.
isn't it? If you have
Exactly.
health insurance,
Yeah.
I mean, it costs thousands of dollars,
Right.
and it's going up every year.
And that's one reason employees work. Sometimes it's
Yes,
for their
yes, yes.
insurance.
Another issue I think that's out there is because health care insurance is getting so expensive.
Expensive.
Many times they're big deductibles, is that
Right.
right? And
Yes.
that's a bad thing for patients.
Right.
So they have a problem with their deductibles
And that's another thing that we're really looking into is having a mechanism for patients that have big deductibles that they can come in, we can set them up on payment plans where
Yes.
they're not having to just pull all that money out at
well,
one
that's
time.
right. But and the other thing that happens is, I think sometimes people are just leery of just anything,
Right.
and I mean, I'm not without sympathy for that. That's
Right.
a very difficult thing.
It
If
is.
your economic circumstances are strained,
Especially with people being laid off from their jobs, and I mean,
it's a rather
bad.
difficult economic time out there,
It
isn't
is.
it? And and healthcare is so expensive. I think we're trying to make efforts to make things go a little smoother, which is a difficult story, isn't it?
Really getting back to having compassion for the patient and
Yes,
just
yes.
going back to basics, taking
Yes.
care of the patient.
Yes, that's a difficult problem, isn't it? You know, I think that healthcare is getting so complex, and really, it's a team effort, is
Right,
it not?
exactly.
So we have the doctor, and that's what I've tried to talk about a little bit on our production. That the doctors are really dependent on a whole host of people just to make things work.
Right.
Now, I think one of the things that's out there is the idea that the institute is basically a private practice arrangement. But what's happening is the situation is changing, and I mean, I think more and more government institutions or hospitals are really putting their apparatus in place. Is that
Right,
correct?
exactly.
So there's more of that occurring.
Yes.
And we have to wonder how efficient that will or will not be. I mean, we have an efficiency contest, don't we?
Right.
What kind of apparatus can deliver health care the most efficiently, the most compassionately, and the least expensively?
Right. Exactly.
And so I think the public needs to be aware that private practice, people are making efforts all the time to make things better. Are
Right.
they not?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, now, in your journey through life, Pam, can you recollect anything that amusing occurred? Do you have any funny stories for your child that you dare you tell? No, I take that
I
back.
probably can't tell them.
No, don't. All right. I've decided you can't tell any funny stories. No, but certainly a lot of things happen that
Yeah.
are, sometimes they're comical, sometimes they're not.
Probably because of HIPAA
Oh,
regulations,
that's right.
I can't now.
Well, all right, now you've given us another thing to talk about. Let's discuss the HIPAA regulations, since I've discouraged you from telling funny stories. You could tell them about the doctors, is what I had in mind. Are we covered by that? I hope you can't tell any funny stories about me now.
Oh,
So,
I
no,
probably
Oh, no,
could.
you probably could. I know there's some doctors. Probably there are more funny stories about the orthopedic surgeons than the neurosurgeons.
Well, I don't know. It might be a close second.
It's a close second there, okay. Well, let's discuss HIPAA violations. What is that? What is all this HIPAA?
That is just patient medical records, keeping everything confidential and making sure that no one just gets those records. That is very important now. That is one of the reasons for all this electronic medical records.
So what steps do we take to try and keep records confidential? I mean, what do we do about that?
Well, a lot of it is going into the electronic medical records and educating the staff.
Yes.
I mean, the staff has to be really educated because
yes.
they just can't talk about
Right.
patient's.
It's a big thing. And so when you go to the doctor, you really, I guess you have to say it's like visiting a priest. You'd like to think that this doctor is going to be devoted to your interests, and that things that you say are quite confidential, because we really do get all sorts of stories, and we certainly make every effort to make sure, and we do this. We just keep things in a very confidential.
I mean, even in personnel records, it's confidential everywhere, but employees sign a confidentiality statement.
Right. So it's no small thing.
No, it's not.
To make certain that the patient's privacy is protected.
Right. Exactly.
Well, let's see. So we're going forward in the future, and the year is, I think it could be said, we just don't know what's going to happen to the American healthcare system.
Right.
It's almost 2012. We have these enormous reforms in place. And it's going to be, we're going to have to cope with this on sort of a battlefield set of circumstances.
Right.
And these regulations, we have all kinds of new regulations, new arrangements, all kinds of new things are happening. And are we befuddled, or can we handle this? What do you think?
We can handle it.
We can handle it.
We can handle it. It's trying at times.
Is the government giving us enough time to really get things? We don't really know what's going to happen.
Right.
That's the problem, isn't it?
No, and the government will tell you a date, and then all of a sudden they'll change that date.
Yes.
They may give you a little more time. So, and this has been going on since I've been working.
Right.
Medicare may say, okay, you've got till this time to do it, and then they'll come up and change the date on you a month before.
And we get these changes in regulations or policies, and there are many times just so almost, I would use the word capricious. You have a very difficult time understanding why they did this or did not do this.
And we need almost sometimes just an attorney in the office to even read it.
It is. I'll say this to the public. These regulations are so complicated.
They are.
It's very difficult just for your doctor to understand what the government does or does not want.
And as employees, it's hard for us
trying to keep all that straight.
Try to keep all that straight, and it's a lot of reading that someone has. It's a full-time job.
Yes.
It's and even with the surgery center.
Yes, there's so many things that are happening. Yes. Well, now, Pam, we're nearing the end of your interview. I mean, and I know there could be some Hollywood agents that might be out there.
I hope so.
I mean, so this could happen. I mean, if you get, we're going to put your phone number at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, great! Great,
that'd be good. That's a little joke. So if the Hollywood agents are out there, they can just call you.
I don't have a problem at all.
Yes, that's good. That's good. Well, I'll just give you a little praise here. It's very difficult to deal with doctors in high-stress situations, isn't it? The public needs to know that these doctors are really intense. They're very intense people about trying to make things work. Right. Is that correct?
Exactly. And that I have a lot of respect for physicians just being able to do what they do every day.
Yes.
So, and having employees to help you is a big.
And I'll tell you what, you do a very good job, Pam.
Well, thank you. Thank
you. You're almost any relatives you want to say hello to tonight? You say, go ahead. Your son, any say hello?
Oh, my son is Brian Atkins.
Yes.
I have sister Denise Land and Lisa Harris.
And how about any animals?
Oh, I have Tigger, who is my Maltese.
I thought that was a tropical bird.
No.
Okay.
That's
okay.
my
All right.
Maltese.
Okay, we've had our little joke here. Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for coming,
thank you
Pam.
for having
me. It's really
me.
great. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.